Well, we are back in here on Three Dog Thursday, time again for the video roundtable on YouTube. Another reminder, if you're only hearing us via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, come see the smiling faces and the moving pictures on the YouTube video, including Jason Cole, who is already showing off prior to me pressing record the beautiful Cole estate that he repainted over the course of about 6 to 9 weeks. Jason Cole, longtime National Football writer, author, NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, and author of a new John Elway book that we're going to get to. How are you, Mighty One?
I am fantastic because I have recovered from painting not only the walls but the ceiling of this room, and having to do it numerous times because it was such a dark blue. But we won't speak of that again because it was a nightmare, but I'm fabulous. Thank you.
All right, that's outstanding. Also with me waiting patiently is Mark Ennis, the afternoon host of The Drive on ESPN Louisville's radio station. And I have several reasons that I have Mark here, not the least of which is the Saturday night huge college football game, Louisville and Miami, that he's obviously very interested in. I'm working that game as well on national radio. They couldn't find anybody else. I was available. I answered the phone. I'll be there for Louisville, Miami Saturday. But Mark is also, Jason Cole, a huge Buccaneers Go Bucs fan, and we're both kind of Jones. And Mark Ennis, good to have you, Captain.
It's good to be back. I paid my dues like the old-fashioned way. We used to buy cheap end zone seats in the old sombrero and move to the 40-yard line shortly after kickoff. I paid my dues.
Yeah, a lot of bad football in the orange creamsicle uniforms, although, as Doug Williams and the late Leroy Selman always said, we never had any problems winning in the orange uniforms. It was kind of after they left and gone that things were that bad. But Mark and I go back that far with the Buccaneers and with this team. All right, so let's get right to it here on the roundtable. You know, Jason, where Mark and I are coming from. I'm obviously part of the Bucs radio broadcast. Mark is obviously a fan. He's there in Louisville, grew up in this in the Tampa Bay area where I am, and is a fan. Give me some objectivity, if you would, Mr. Cole, here on Buccaneers losing the opening game with the Saints. Saints are a good team playing at home. What did you make of that, by the way? What happened there in the Superdome as the Brady era gets off to a loss?
I mean, there wasn't any magic to this first game. Like I think everybody was hoping that you bring in Brady and then magically everything is transformed. And then all of a sudden you sit back and go, oh yeah, well maybe this is a little more painful than we think it's going to be. And transition's not as simple as you just plug and play a guy and everything's okay. You know, there was communication problems. The first interception, when we were looking at the second interception, but the first interception on the one to Evans, you know, where Evans runs the wrong route. And you can see it on Brady's face, and they realize that. And then that second throw, Brady's trying to make a play because they're down. They're trying to rally in this game, and I get that. But he can't make that throw anymore. Not from the wide side, you know, on the left, trying to throw all the way back to the right sideline. You know, you are 43 years old. That doesn't happen anymore. So don't make that throw. But, you know, people who are saying, oh, hey, you know, this is Jameis, just like what was going on with Jameis. You know, give it a little time. You know, give it a break. Pump the brakes a little bit, and give it a little time to mix. I still think this is a game. This is a team that ends up winning 10, 11 games and making the playoffs. I love them as a contender. I think they're a really strong team overall. But this road game, no, this one wasn't going to work in this situation.
And Mark, sure. And Mark, one of the things that we know, because we've watched the Bucs for so long, they have become experts over the course of their whole history of beating themselves with turnovers and mistakes. And it doesn't matter if Tom Brady's a first ballot unanimous Hall of Famer. If you make mistakes and turn it over, they had a botched kickoff fumble in the second half that was a killer. Too many mistakes, Mark, against good teams. You're not going to win.
And we talked about this in the context of college, sort of on the show, like, you have to be extra gracious in week one. You didn't even get like preseason games where just sort of the perfunctory reps to do some basic stuff. And I thought they looked like a team that really hadn't played against somebody else together. I think you were hoping, though, New Orleans not going to be the sort of the madhouse that it normally is, that maybe you'd be a little more sort of tough mentally. And I thought they were still kind of the same out of sorts team that they always are when they play in New Orleans.
Yes, and there was no crowd. There was no, I mean, It was eerie. Bruce Arians called it weird that there was no crowd cheering no matter what happened, booing if it went badly. So it's just the new normal, I guess, in the NFL. And look, it does take some time, and the schedule is a lot easier. We'll talk about this a little bit more here. Panthers at home, followed by the Broncos. More on the Broncos with Jason in a couple of moments here. And then the LA Chargers at home. You have an opportunity if you're the Bucs and you play well and you play smart to be 3-1. You could win all 3 of those games, 2 of them at home, and then everything calms down. For right now, though, in and around the market, there's a lot going nuts. Jason Cole, to you, because we don't just want to dominate this with Buccaneer conversation, even though Mark and I would enjoy that. Give me a team, give me a player, give me a game that stood out from you on weekend number 1 of the NFL, if you would.
Well, I thought generally the quality of play was so much better than I expected, and the equivalent of most first weeks, or even if not a little bit better, which tells you we don't even need preseason at this point, except for maybe young players trying to figure out how to play in this league and judge them whether they're capable of playing in the league. But that's a separate matter. On your question, I think there were two that stood out. From a team standpoint, it's the Arizona Cardinals going into San Francisco, and again, no fans, so it's not your traditional away game kind of thing. But still, you're going on the road. You're still having to deal with travel. You're still having some distractions. They dealt with that, and they won a huge game for them. And now they came up with a blocked punt that helped turn that game. But I thought that was huge for them. And I on an individual level, Mitchell Trubisky, just look, he was horrible for better part of 3 quarters, and all of a sudden it just switches, and he looks like that franchise quarterback. And moreover, the Lions, just blow another 4th quarter lead under Matt Patricia. But Trubisky just made some sensational throws, and the game winner is as good a throw as you can make for any quarterback. So I was shocked by what I saw, because he got it back together, and it gives you hope that maybe Trubisky will finally put all those parts in place and become the player that they thought he would be.
Watch me serve one up. Thank you, Jason Cole. You're hearing the voice of Jason Cole if you're only on the audio podcast. Again, find us on the YouTube version of this. You'll see us. You'll see highlights that we're talking about. You'll hear video references we're making. That's how you find us, is on the YouTube version of this and a social media link of 3 Dog Thursday. Mark Ennis, I'm going to serve it up on a silver platter. Lamar Jackson had to stand out to you yet again off the MVP season. He was brilliant. I know it's the Browns, but he was brilliant again.
Yeah, well, you served it up, but I was going to go there anyway. Yeah, he looked fantastic, and I thought what was impressive about that game is there was really no crazy long run from him. It was very workmanlike. The vast majority of it was from the pocket, and then you got to see some of the younger guys, J.K. Dobbins. Like, that's not fair for them to be able to go from Mark Ingram to J.K. Dobbins running the ball like that now. And then really the Browns are a story too. You thought, all right, Stefanski's coming in there. It's not Freddie Kitchens and kind of a zoo, a guy who shouldn't be a head coach. They've invested so much, and they look worse. And don't forget, they beat the Ravens week 3 or 4 last year.
Yes,
40 on them.
Yes,
and he throws an interception on the opening drive. The Ravens upgraded on defense. It showed, and the Browns are still going backward despite all the investments there.
Cole loves it when I give these stats. The first-year coaches, or the first season, first game with a new team, including the first-year coaches like Stefanski, were 1-4 Sunday on weekend number 1. Ron Rivera was the only one that won with a new team, the Redskins, and he's not a first-year coach. He's a longtime coach. The number now over the last 3 seasons, I believe this is correct. I did the original research. 2-14. Thank you. Or yes, 2-14 is the record on the opening weekend. It had been 1-10. It is now 2-14 in the last 16 times that a first game new coach coaches weekend 1. Just keep an eye on that for next year. It's not easy, right, Jason?
It's a bad form of baptism. Is that what we're trying to say here?
Or baptism by fire, right?
Yeah. So I was trying not to go cliche, but I'll agree with that. Baptism by fire. It's an overwhelming task to finally be in charge and to understand all the things that you have to do on the sideline. And I think that a lot of coaches don't understand that until it's sort of like playing. You don't know what the feel is like until you actually do it. And you're trying to run the whole game, and you're trying to call plays, and you're trying to keep track of this, and you're trying to keep track of that. And most guys don't learn, I can't do that. And I think the clever coaches learn,
good point.
Okay, I can handle this, but let me go have somebody who can do clock management and timeout management and replay stuff for me. And I'm going to defer completely on the defensive side to my coordinator unless I have to parachute in. Like, that's what I think coaches really have to learn. And it's just too hard in the first week, unless you're a guy, as you pointed out, like Rivera.
To Jason's first point, though, about how crisp the play was, relatively speaking, for week one, only 18 holding calls on offensive line across the entire league. It's the fewest in a single week in 20 years.
I saw that.
I think they're maybe not calling.
Was it some of, hey, let it go, or was it a little bit better play? I was surprised. There were really only 2 games, and then we'll move off the NFL and move on to more specific stuff. I believe the Chargers game with the Bengals that I didn't see a lot of, not a very well played offensive game. And there was maybe one other one. And other than that, almost every game had explosive plays, had lots of touchdowns. There were not slosh, 10-6, 13-10 games by and large. Correct me if I'm wrong, but by and large, the offense was better.
You're right. And I think another thing to point out is what I have always noticed in the first week and even through the first 3 weeks in the NFL season, is the tackling is poor. You get holding calls and you get some sloppiness and get some low-scoring games. And, maybe Denver and Tennessee wasn't the best played game in the world either, but it was still kind of exciting. But the thing that impressed me in all this is the level of tackling, especially when you go to how, like, Denver's defense played against Tennessee, against Derrick Henry, and how much they hit him and hit him hard. That impressed me for this week. And again, gets me feeling like the college model may be smarter than what the NFL model is, which is just go play and don't worry about preseason.
Yeah, because college obviously does not have that. They just come in and play. And we'll get to Louisville and the market where Mark is and the college game as we round on, and we'll get to some underdog thoughts on this as well on Three Dog Thursday. All right, so Jason mentioned Denver there in passing, and this ties in, again, you've been working for a long time, and I wanted to get you on because the book is out. On the Elway, did I see the exhale there from Jason Cole?
Yesterday was. Let me just say, yesterday the Tuesday the 15th of September was a glorious day because it just ended 7 years of research and writing, talking to more than 200 people, battling with editors, trying to sell a book, do this.
And there it is.
There it is.
And you gave birth. What you're saying is you gave birth. And there's the baby.
And the baby is right there, and I am so proud of that. It's octuplets. And I just, I'm Octomom. I'm it's fantastic. That feeling of accomplishment after working so hard for this. And to have people, I was on one Denver station a couple of days ago, and it was a lifetime Denver resident and radio host who said, I thought I knew everything about Elway, and I read this, and I learned so much about Elway in this book, and I just was like, that's exactly what you want to hear when you write a book like this.
Amen.
Your research is transcendent about a figure who is this enormous to begin with.
Well, and again, compliments and props to Jason for taking that amount of time because, again, he is an amazing figure when you consider number 1 overall pick, engineered the original trade saying, I don't want to play for the Colts, could have played baseball. That's in the book. You teased us with that. Could have played for the New York Yankees who drafted him, won Super Bowls, and is now transitioned to the Denver Broncos. Just one more front office, one more to you. They've had the highest of success, Jason, but right now they're really struggling, and they didn't look a lot better on Monday night, Elway's Broncos. And this really eats at him right now that they're having this kind of problems again this season. And the competitive side of that relentless life of John Elway, the Broncos not very good still.
No, I mean, I think the talent level's there. I mean, like you see with Judy and Fant, and you see hints of it with Locke. We're not quite sold on Locke yet, but there's certainly some positive things. Offensive line looked better. Running backs are okay. If you put Sutton back out there, I think it's a very complete looking offense and can be very explosive. but Judy's got to catch the ball, right? Like he had 2 drops in that game, including the killer one with 4 minutes left, where they're about to go in, get a field goal, get a score, do something that changes the outcome of that game or changes the dynamics of that game in the last minute for Tennessee. It didn't happen. But I think you see promise. But when Vic Fangio is not calling timeouts with 1:27 left and costing himself in the end of it about probably 30 seconds of time on the clock, maybe only 20, but that can make a whole huge difference in how you manage your last possession. And that's the kind of stuff that John Elway is going to look down there and say, do I have the right guy coaching here? Do I have, and Fangio last year blew a bunch of these close games. I think that they had 3 games like this that came down to the fourth quarter, if not the last minute of the game, that they didn't handle well. And I know that Elway will have no patience for that. As much as he believes in Fangio and the job he's going to do, and yes, Von Miller wasn't there, and you can make a million excuses. But that game was a winnable game. And if it's a winnable game, John Elway is going to say, we have to get that game.
Competitor that is there on Mr. Elway for sure. So again, we'll get another plug in for Jason's book coming up. The voice of Jason Cole with me, longtime National Football League writer with Yahoo Sports, Bleacher Report. Love his insight. Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, and the new book is out right now on John Elway, A Relentless Life, that he has been working on for years, telling stories and all the different insight that he's gotten from different people on that. All right, Mark Ennis, let's come back to you and the matchup that is going to be coming up. That is Louisville and Miami. The Cardinals got off to a fantastic start against Western Kentucky last Saturday night. We're looking at that here with Malik Cunningham, the quarterback, having an outstanding game, in particular in the first half. Got him in the end zone, 4 times in the first half. So, again, this is in your wheelhouse. Louisville now in the ACC hosting Miami coming up here on Saturday night in prime time. Everybody in your town's talking about the Cardinals and how they looked, and I know you were relieved to have football back on the football field here for Louisville in this opening game.
Yeah, relieved is a great word for it. I mean, there's really nothing worse that could happen to this city than for the NCAA tournament to get canceled. So we lived through that, and I think the prospect of maybe football not happening was going to be too much for people, especially coming off last year, where Louisville was so much better in year 1 under Scott Satterfield than anybody thought they would be. The implosion of 2-10 under Bobby Petrino, and you're like, I just hope they win maybe 4 games and look like they want to be there again. And then they go 8-5, win a bowl game. It looked just dramatically different. Yeah, people are very excited, and they are a very, very big play offense, which is kind of not really Scott's kind of wheelhouse. You go back to the App State days. They were very physical and kind of run-oriented and played great defense, and this team's very different, but I'll give him props for sort of being flexible and sort of making the most of what they've got, which is some very, very good skill players.
This Malik Cunningham, the quarterback, you were filling me in. He's an Alabama kid, but he's undersized a little bit. So he got out of Alabama, but he looked fantastic as the dual threat quarterback. And again, the nation's going to get to see him. There's not as many college football games right now. I know the Big Ten is now back. The SEC, though, not playing. The Big Ten not playing. So this game will be featured a little bit more. And Cunningham is a fun quarterback, and Miami's going to have their hands full against this guy Saturday night.
Yeah, he is a great deep ball thrower. And he had just the opposite reputation before sort of being input into the lineup a year ago. After the first 2 weeks, Juwan Pass was the quarterback last year, and Scott Satterfield kept complaining, hey, we're running the ball pretty well, and the tight ends and stuff's working pretty well, but we've got to get the ball down the field. Week 3 against Western Kentucky, he's forced into the lineup because of injury, and it was bombs away. And it really became kind of their calling card by the end of last year, and that continued on. And they've got 3 receivers that they feel extremely good about that can get down the field. And they had 4 plays of over 40 yards in the first half, against Western Kentucky. The big plays, a big part of what they do.
All right, the voice again of Mark Ennis. Follow him at Mark Ennis. Also, Jason Cole here. Follow him at Jason Cole62. If you're only hearing us again on 3 Dog Thursday, I know I repeatedly say this, but we got a lot of people listening on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts that found us through the Sports Gambling Podcast network of shows, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Find the video. Find the video on YouTube. You'll see Mark Ennis. You'll see Jason Cole. You'll see me kicking it around on the video roundtable. And again, we have fun with all of this. All right, so one other thing that I like to do is we like to get to the underdogs for this week just to have fun. Maybe you have one, maybe you have more, guys. I've got the odds up from our friends at mybookie.ag here for this week for the lines. Jason Cole, I'll go to you first. Do you have an underdog that stands out? I know things begin on Thursday night with the Browns giving the Cincinnati Bengals 6 points, which is kind of interesting. I'm looking at a couple of them, but I don't want to speak for you. Do you have an underdog on this list as we take a look that stands out for this week just for fun?
Well, God, Tampa given 9 is a big number. I mean, I like Tampa to win that game, but given 9 is a lot.
Yep.
Right? I also like, I mean, the Rams are getting 1.5.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, if the Rams are getting points in that one.
Yeah, they were successful last week against the Cowboys getting points at home. Philly is actually getting the 1.5 at home. You're right, as we see it.
Yeah, and then Houston. Show me that Houston-Baltimore game. That kind of jumped off the page a little bit. That was a +7, I think, for Houston on that one.
That's correct, at home. And the home underdogs actually did all right.
At home, yeah, Deshaun Watson, I just don't see that he's going to – I think he's going to be geeked up for this game. Now, I don't like what they've done in the offseason in Houston, losing DeAndre Hopkins. I think it showed in a big way. They really weren't competitive at all against Kansas City after the first quarter. But I just get the feeling that Deshaun Watson is not going to really be patient, especially when he's going up against Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, no doubt. That's the big matchup that's going to be upcoming.
Show out in that game.
Yeah, no doubt with those two guys. That's for sure. All right, so Mark Ennis, did you have one that just stands out to you? I mean, Jason was saying be leery of the Panthers. First road game for Matt Rule as an NFL coach. Teddy Bridgewater, a Louisville guy. There's a Louisville connection again coming into Tampa. That's a 9-point line. Was there another one that stood out for you there as an underdog? And maybe it's a college underdog. I don't know if you have one for fun on Three Dog Thursday.
Yeah, the college slate isn't great, honestly. I'm a little surprised Miami is an underdog to Louisville right now, given last year's game. But in the NFL, I really liked what New England did with Cam Newton in Week 1. They're 4-point underdogs, I think, against Seattle. They got a great defense. That'll be a short game, given the way both teams sort of like to run the ball and that sort of thing. I like you give me New England and some points. I like what they did on offense. I think that doesn't look too bad to me.
Well, and again, there's a question mark around that game, too, the seriousness of the fires and the air quality and the smoke in Seattle about is that game going to be played outside in Seattle? What are the alternative sites that they might play it? Again, it's Three Dog Thursday that we're debuting the podcast. We don't know. And that decision may not be made until later in the weekend about can they play it there? Does the air quality improve? And so that might be an issue as well there on that. All right, we're coming to the end of our conversation time here on the video roundtable. Let me get the plugs in one more time. Again, for Mark Ennis, here is how and where you find him on The Drive, weekday afternoons in Louisville, Kentucky. He is the godfather of Louisville Sports Talk Radio. Find him on 93.9 The Ville. On the ESPN Sports Radio affiliate there in the afternoons a little. Did I do good enough there on the plug? And they find you at Mark Ennis on Twitter. Give him a follow, in particular with this game coming on Saturday night in prime time against the Miami Hurricanes. And then we mentioned Jason Cole as well. Here's the book. You're seeing it on the video screen. Again, the book is out from Hachette Books. Elway, A Relentless Life. Jason has relentlessly worked on this book and has it out as of this week. It is available in bookstores, Amazon, correct, Jason? Where else can they get a hold of it?
BarnesandNoble.com, the whole shebang. You can anywhere that you buy a book, you can find Elway, A Relentless Life, and please do, because I like writing books.
Can I you said like a Denver person said I thought I knew everything about Elway. I don't want you to give the whole book away, but it's like is there an Elway fact or story that we wouldn't know that you could share without giving the whole
probably
book
like
away?
9 of them. Give him a good one.
There's a bunch of them. Like one of the favorite ones was when he and Darryl Strawberry faced off to the LA High School Championship in 1979. So you have the #1 overall pick from the 1980 MLB draft against the number 1 pick in the 1983 NFL draft. It's kind of cool the way that I'll pat myself on the back, but the way I explained the whole game and what the lead up to it, what happened. That's a cool story that a lot of people don't know about. My favorite one is the intrigue of Edgar Kaiser, who almost nobody knows who he is, but he was the owner of the Broncos for 2 years in 82, 83, sold the team in 84. He's the guy who actually thought of making the trade for Elway. And he's the guy who actually engineered the whole thing. And so the way the whole thing breaks down over months, basically, of him convincing and making this happen, because Dan Rives thought it would never happen. And John Beek, the general manager, never thought that they would pull off this trade. Edgar Kaiser, absolutely 100% is the guy who pulled off the trade and executed it. And I will say the last key element of making the trade work was 2 preseason games. One played in 1984 and one played in 1985. After the trade was made, you'll have to read the book to find out why those 2 games are critical. But that's an example of the kinds of things that I elucidate in this book.
Well, and he does a fantastic job bringing it more modern because, again, a lot of the younger fans don't appreciate how fantastic Elway was as a player. Cole and I are old farts. Mark is not as old as we are, but we remember watching Elway. A lot of the younger fans know Elway more as the executive with Tim Tebow and that whole circus and Tebow winning a playoff game. There's stuff in the book about that. And then engineering the Peyton Manning trade recently, or actually signing him as a free agent, as it turns out, luring him to Denver, and they win a Super Bowl. All of the juice is there on all, and Elway and Manning weren't getting along at the end. There's another tease, right, Jason, that they need to read the book and find out.
Right. There's a great question that John Elway asked Peyton Manning after the 2014 season. That was, let's just say, it was loaded, fully loaded, is the way I will put it.
Okay, so again, I'm going to share the screen one more time that the book is Elway, A Relentless Life. Check it out right here. It's in bookstores everywhere. There you go, from Hatchet Books, the definitive biography on John Elway, the Hall of Fame quarterback, and now the head honcho, the president and GM of the Denver Broncos. So check that out. Check out Mark Ennis. Again, ESPN Louisville. You can find him on the net on ESPN Louisville weekday afternoons in that huge game with the Miami Hurricanes coming up. Again, guys, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me on 3 Dog Thursday. You were great. Jason, good luck with the book. Mark, I'll be seeing you in Louisville this weekend as well. That is, if you want to be seen with me. I'm not sure. I presuppose that. I look forward to seeing you this weekend, and thank you guys for hanging out here on 3 Dog Thursday.
Anytime.
Excellent time.
Love it with these guys. The podcast rolls on. Brian Edwards rejoins me to talk more NFL on 3 Dog Thursday as we continue.